The one that's passing over right now, according to the NASA people, is actually the volume of it going across the sky there is equal to approximately the same volume as the Amazon River watershed.
Wow. Above
That
us.
much water passing over us, yeah.
Scary. Wonder what's happening in Abbotsford today.
I wonder how large an area it's passing over. That's a stunning amount regardless.
I think it's all the southern half of BC, isn't it?
Yeah, well, from the satellite photos, it was sort of crossing over at above us, above Sayward, and all the way down through Victoria and into Washington, and then right across the lower mainland and into the inner reaches of the province. So Abbotsford's going to get hammered.
Yeah.
I was up in the Kootenays last week, and they haven't had that much snow for 40 years. It was literally up to my waist. It was a lot of fun.
Wow. Well, I never shoveled so many times in my life. I shoveled my driveway out 6 times, and it's big. And I shoveled my neighbors out too, so now I got like Popeye arms. Like my muscles are just amazing. No more like chicken wings.
So good morning, directors. Would like to call to order the January 12th, 2022 inaugural meeting of the Electoral Services Committee. And the first item of business will be to elect a chair for the coming year. And if I could call for nominations for that position, please.
Nominate Jim Abram.
Director Abram.
Director Abram.
Director Abram, you've been nominated. Would you accept that?
Yes, I would, and thank you to my nominator.
Thank you very much. Are there any further nominations for the position of chair? For the third and last time, further nominations for chair for the Electoral Services Committee. And hearing no further nominations, I hereby declare Director Abram elected as chair for 2022. And
thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. If we may now proceed with the election for the vice chair position.
Nominate Director Lee.
Director Lee has been nominated. Director Lee, would you accept that nomination?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there further nominations for the position of vice chair? For the third and last time, any further nominations for vice chair? Hearing none, would declare Director Lee elected as vice chair for 2022.
Thank you, everybody.
We'll now turn the meeting over to your new chair, Director Abram, and I believe we would be on section E on the agenda. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd first like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional territories of the Kwakwaka'wakw people. Hope I got that right. So on to section E, adoption of the public agenda.
Move adoption.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, opposed, carried.
And Mr. Chair,
we don't have any.
If we could have the agenda on the screen.
Mr. Chairman, I'm having
Tom, can you put that up there?
I'm having some technical difficulties. We'll try and get that up as soon as we can. Thank you.
Okay, it doesn't matter. Just let me know where we're at.
Okay. Yeah, I'm reading it off of my iPad next to my computer, so I'll notify you. Okay, so we did the adoption of the public agenda. There it is. And thank you, Tom. No petitions and delegations.
Like
adoption of
move receipt of minutes from all 4 meetings presented, 1 through 4.
Second.
Okay, is that okay with you, Tom, to do all four?
Yes, that's fine, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Any discussion on any of those? Any opposed? Okay, that carries. Business arising from the minutes. Anyone have any business arising for the minutes? I think I do. If there's none from others, I'd just like to say that I will have a motion that will be, it's either been distributed or will be distributed to present under new business. And since there's no add note under new business, I figured this would be the best place to put it in. I'll just read it to you. Well, I'll come back and read it to you when I'm doing new business. Okay, so on business arising, anyone opposed?
Jim, can you just give us a topic heading for the new business item?
Yeah, it's an information item regarding April Point properties.
Thanks.
Okay, and onward to staff reports, development permit application, Hedifine.
Move receipt of report.
Second.
Okay. On receipt of the report, any discussion from other directors?
Mr. Chair, John, I think will speak to this first.
Thank you through the chair. This is Aniko. I'll speak.
Okay, hi, Dave.
Another device, but my
Okay,
screen went completely black. So I'm happy to carry on, but I can't mute and don't know if IT has any advice. There's a little white hand in the middle of a black screen.
Huh.
Okay, you're showing up on my screen.
Yeah,
Great.
you're here
Okay,
for
well,
me. I can hear you, see you.
We'll carry on, and I apologize if there's a kid interruption. I can't mute myself.
Hi, Director Anderson. I'll see if I can give you a hand.
Thanks.
Okay, so we were at
Hedifine.
receipt of the CA report, and does anybody have anything to say on receipt? Any discussion?
I think Aniko said she'll speak to this.
Right. So now, Aniko, if you'd like to take over, please speak up.
Thank you to the chair and the committee. This application is for development permit for a form and character commercial development permit for a proposed cannabis operation, which was approved by bylaw 342 back in October of 2020 at Industrial Way. The development permit is to approve the form and character for the permitted use. It will adhere to the guidelines of the official community plan, including those aspects related to both siting, screening, landscaping, lighting, and signage. In addition to that, the development has been designed to meet with the guidelines required by Health Canada. Those would include those respecting odor, dust, noise, and engineering requirements to meet building code. The building is proposed to be 557 square meters in size. It is a steel building in design and will include screened parking areas, security fencing, and will be dark sky compliant. It will also blend with the rural nature of the area. There's no additional lighting that is proposed to be installed on the property. And the existing landscaping will be retained. All setback requirements and other requirements of the zoning will also be adhered to. Given the fact that the development complies with all of the development permit guidelines contained within our OCP, it is recommended that we approve the development permit attached for the committee's consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Aniko. I just have a couple of questions, if I could, please. On page 4, it talks about the outdoor parking area, lights, etc. I'm just wondering, are those, have you been told or shown the height of those outdoor lights? Are they like a standard hydro standard that is like, I don't know, 16, 18 feet high? Or are these just lower level lighting? That's a question to you, Annika.
Yeah, sorry, Director. I'm just trying to determine if I actually have that information here. I was under the impression that the lighting was from the building, not additional pole lighting.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. And then the other question that I have is, it sort of came up under intergovernmental implications or whatever. We know that, some of the things that are happening inside the building are under federal or provincial guidelines, and it will follow their rules. The enforcement of odor control and things like that, will that be done by complaint to the SRD, or will people have to go to other agencies if there is a problem with the odor control? Will they have to go to other agencies to have compliance sought?
Yeah, thank you, through the Director. Depending on what the nature of the complaint is, some of those complaints are outside of the jurisdiction of the SRD and would be regulated through Health Canada. With respect to odor, given the fact that we don't have a bylaw that would address that, that would be a Health Canada type concern. Security also would be Health Canada. Our complaints would be more directly related to those that are contained within our bylaws. Noise wouldn't be something that we would look at either at this time. So basically, at this point, it would be more of a use complaint driven scenario. So the SRD would be able to facilitate those complaints, but the enforcement itself would likely be done through Health Canada.
Okay, thank you for that. And I believe that we do have as a preamble or a couple of pages at the beginning of our bylaw that do talk about odor, noise, etc., not being allowed to go off of the property. So would those not then fall under, would those issues not then fall under the SRD enforcement?
Yeah, thank you, through the chair. As stated previously, that content of the zoning bylaw is not enforceable. That language, although there, is not appropriate within the zoning bylaw. So some of those details, as discussed previously, that may or may not want to be enforced should be included in a separate bylaw and given consideration there with respect to nuisance, unsightliness, those sorts of things. So the zoning bylaw is not the appropriate place for those types of regulations.
Okay, and the last one is looking at the building. We have a perfect green building, the way it will show up the least, but we have a very, very large, spacious silver roof. Is there any way to request the applicants, to color the roof the same as the rest of the building?
Thank you, to the chair. There's nothing in the OCP guidelines that would require the roof to be of a certain color or shade. You could certainly suggest that, but the development and the form and character, the color, the design all meets the OCP guidelines at this time. But certainly, like I said, you could always mention that it would be nice if the roof line, roof color matched the facade of the building, and see if they're amenable to that.
Okay, well, I would like to make that suggestion if I could. And I don't know how I do that. Do I have to make a motion or what?
I would move
Dave?
that the applicant be requested by the planning department to purchase dark green metal roofing instead of the silver. And that should be part of the development permit guidelines. Like that
need
should
a
be
seconder?
included in the development permit stipulations. Nothing to do with the zoning bylaw or anything else. You can put your own form and character expectations into the development permit. So I'd move that the roof be dark green metal.
I think we're still on receipt, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Oh, you're right. Okay, so as soon as we finish with receipt, we'll go on to your motion. Okay, was your hand up for that reason, Brenda, or
no?
another?
I had another thing I wanted to ask, and it sort of relates to the roof issue, but it relates to the development permit guidelines, the expectations for form and character that planning department issues, and the fact that this is an industrial building. I know that in Area D, we've had industrial operations such as Ocean Grove gas station, where we had form and character guidelines and laid out for the owners, and the planning department took a security deposit to make sure that the vegetation, screening and whatnot were put in place. Are we going to be asking for any security deposit from the owners to ensure that we can enforce the development permit guidelines as we have with Area D?
Thank you.
Monica?
Yeah, thank you through the chair to the director. The OCP guidelines within Electoral Area D are much more stringent than those in Area C. There's a much more significant requirement for landscaping and screening in Area D. This industrial development permit for Area C does not have that same requirement. So in this case, there is very little requirements for landscaping and therefore no requirement for a landscape bond, which also speaks to the fact of limited regulation regarding color and scheme for buildings in Area C. Area D has a much more significant requirement for shading and natural colors than what Area C does. So that's why we're more limited here, unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever way you look at it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I know we are requesting a bond on other landscaping, and we have requested bonds on other landscaping on other development permits. So I guess those were just one-offs, and maybe this could be a one-off also, that we could request a minimal bond to make sure that the trees and the fencing that are proposed are done within a reasonable time.
If you'd like me to respond, Mr. Chair, the reason for the bond for the other development permit, which I believe you're referring to, is because it's within the QCO Village Plan, and those development permit guidelines are much more stringent and do require landscape bonds. Thank you.
Okay, we'll leave that one. Go ahead and go to Noba. You're muted.
Thank you. My understanding, I'm just seeking clarification.
Oh, you're muted again.
That the existing, seeking clarification from staff, my understanding that the existing application meets the development permit requirements, and that the development permit in place for the industrial lands in Area C does not speak to specific color and form and character. And I'm just saying that if that is the case, I would not feel comfortable asking for a change to a building that is already there, that presumably met the development permit requirements when it was originally built in the industrial place that it was. I just think it's over and above to be asking for retrofits to a building that meets the guidelines. And so I'm just asking for clarity from staff if indeed the existing building and the existing development permit application meets the guidelines as present. And if so, I think we should let it be. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. And Annika, I have to ask you, this building isn't there yet, is it?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's correct. It is yet to be built. But yes, Director Anderson, you're right. The form of character is of the development is being met with the proposal.
Okay, so if there was a request for a different color of roofing, it could be a friendly request, but not a requirement. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And is there anything else on receipt? Anyone opposed? That's carried. Brenda, you had a motion?
Yes, I'd move that the planning department negotiate with the owner to request a friendly request for a dark green metal roof as opposed to the silver. Period.
Seconder?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Gerald. Any discussion? Noba?
Yeah, can I just ask planning staff of the advisability of this? I know in other situations we've got into requesting things beyond what is legally required, and we've been advised from legal counsel that we're on shaky ground. I think this is an entirely fair, friendly request, but I'm just asking from a process perspective, what's advisable here.
I think what we're talking about is a request, not a requirement. So
Well, Mr.
we're basically
Chairman,
having a discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll jump in if Annika is not going to. Certainly, the regional district can make a request at any time, which is entirely separate legally from the concept of a regulatory requirement. So if that's the committee's wish to include a request as part of the approval process, that can certainly be done legally. And I don't think that imperils the outcome of considering the development permit itself. The developer is free to accept or reject the request if that's the intent. And I don't see an issue with that if that's the committee's wish to make that request.
Thank you.
Okay, and I would support the request to have a discussion with Mr. Hedifine about changing the color of the roof. Annika, or sorry, Tom, can you put the page that had the site plan sketch back on, not of the building, but of the actual site plan? Yeah, there you go. So I'd have to ask Annika, how much further up towards the top of the screen is West Road? Or is it the other way?
It's the other way. We ensured that it was going to be sited appropriately distanced from West Road as per the zoning. So we ensured that there was a significant distance between the structure and West Road as zoning permits.
Okay, so the reason that I would support negotiation for a color change is because I believe that once the building is built, that you will, because West Road is higher up than this area, that you will be able to see that from West Road, and it basically will look like a, large, whatever it is, 40 by 40 roof, and it'll be silver. So that's the only reason I'm supporting it, and I think it's a reasonable request that when people, that's our most traveled road on Quadra Island. So people will be basically having that in their face all the time. Okay, that's basically all I have to say about it, and it's already been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Anyone opposed? That carries then. All right, we're going to move on to, then there's
Move that the committee recommend
B,
that
that
yeah. Move that the development
Yeah, okay.
permit be as attached to the staff report dated January 4th be approved, and that the corporate officer be authorized to execute the development permit.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? That passes. Okay, on to item 2, Wildlife Corridor and Wetland Protection Covenants, Hagel Subdivision.
Move receipt of report.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Anything on the report, Mr. CAO?
I believe John and/or Annika will speak to this.
Thank you through the chair to the committee. This report is simply to receive approval for the registration of both a wildlife corridor covenant and a wetland protection covenant, which was associated with a previous rezoning for a parcel of land at Craig and Nigel Crescent, also bordering Island Hideaway, also referred to as the Hagel subdivision. Both of these covenants were discussed as part of the rezoning process and were a requirement of the approval of that rezoning to provide protection for both wetland and allow for continued wildlife corridors throughout the property. These 4 properties are ready for final subdivision and require the committee's approval to have them executed and registered on title. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? Oh, I see some hands. Okay, I don't know which was first, Brenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the chair to our manager of operations, I wanted to know if, like it seemed to me, I read in the report that the covenant only applies to lot 1 and 2, whereas lots 3 and 4 have the most notable environmentally sensitive features. I mean, it's all environmentally sensitive land, but it seems that lots 3 and 4 are not included in this covenant. And I think if that's the case, the agreement needs to be amended to explicitly include all 4 CR4A lots in the subdivision, not just lots 1 and 2. And the second question is, has our solicitor seen this and approved it?
Thank you to the chair, to the director. The lots 1 and 3.
2.
1 and 2. Yeah. I'm trying to, how do I explain it? So all the lots are if you look, do we have the map? There we are. So lots 1 and 3, you'll see the cross hatching.
Yes. Yes.
And
lot 4, and then the lot, and then the park. It's all cross-hatched, I believe.
Right. So lot 4 has.
Yeah, the legend was too small for us to read. It didn't blow up.
Yeah, so lot 4 has the covenant, and lots 1 and 3 have a covenant.
Well, why don't they all have covenants? Because they all have environmentally sensitive features that were identified when they were going through the zoning.
Right, but this is what was outlined as part of the environmentally sensitive reports that were provided as part of the rezoning and associated subdivision. So this is what was identified as needing to be covenanted. In addition to that, all of these lots have environmentally sensitive areas which are protected as part of the RIR reports and will be impacted when development occurs. So these are the two areas that we specifically identified that we wanted covenanted as part of the rezoning application. And above this will be additional requirements for environmentally sensitive areas once development actually occurs.
Okay, so lot 5, which is further up the hill, that's going to require more environmentally sensitive development permits once somebody applies to build there.
Correct.
Okay, because the stream runs through between lots 3 and 4. There's a stream going through there. The forest on the north side of the property, adjacent to just behind the houses on Henry Road, I would like to see that protection all the way from Craig Road to the highway. I'd like them to leave up as much vegetation as possible because that is a very well-used wildlife corridor. There's all kinds of mammals in there trying to survive and birds. So, you know, it's a very important wildlife area, and I see that it's cut short of the highway. I know they took down a big maple tree on the highway to make the driveway into lot 3. But the residents on Henry Road would like to maintain the wildlife corridor as wide as possible through from Craig Road to the highway for the wildlife. It's pretty narrow on lot 1. It's just very narrow.
Okay, so at this time, correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like I'm looking at the lines that are drawn on the map here, and SL 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the other 5, they're part of what you're talking about, Brenda, but they're not. It doesn't look like they're part of this particular
development permit.
Or,
this development
yes.
permit, my understanding from the report is that the covenants in this development permit only apply to lots 1 and 2. Right? We're not talking about 3 and 4 yet, I don't think. Are we? Unless we can at this point just put development permit guidelines on 3 and 4 as well.
Okay, I'd have to go to staff to ask that question. Don't be afraid to jump in.
Thank you through the chair. This is what was identified as part of the rezoning process. So when we went through this, we examined all of the environmental assessments that were done, the RIO reports at that time, and determined that in addition to the normal environmentally sensitive areas and associated requirements, the regional district was going to ask that a condition was that a wildlife corridor, in addition to a covenanted area for environmentally sensitive areas, be registered once the property was subdivided. So these are requirements above and beyond what the regional district typically imposes on development, because we were able to do that as part of the rezoning for additional density. So I don't know how better to answer your question than to say the regional district will continue to enforce our environmentally sensitive areas development permit guidelines, in addition to protecting these areas through covenant throughout the development of these parcels.
For clarity, it is parcels 1, 2, 3, and 4 as written in sort of black Sharpie. All are on the table, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. I just feel the corridor for wildlife on lot 1 is barely big enough for a bear to walk through. I mean, we have on that thick part on the north, on the nearest the highway on lot 3, the thicker wildlife corridor, we have all types of mammals. We have pheasants, we have eagles. That is a really important wildlife corridor. They come up there, there's a stream nearby, there's a beach across the highway. Like they come up there and they hang out in that forested area. And I don't like the idea of Lot 1 having such a narrow wildlife corridor. It's gonna be very restrictive for the wildlife that live in there. I wish it was the same width or a little wider so they can walk through without being noticed by people.
Okay, so can that be changed?
Well, I'm not sure it needs to be, Mr. Chair. I can't read it, but there's a dimension. Maybe Aniko has something at her fingertips, but there's a dimension on that corridor there. And, you know, just by scale, it looks to be several meters wide, even though in the diagram it looks quite narrow. If you relate it to the road width there, it looks to be several meters wide, but maybe Aniko has something, because there's a dimension on it just to the left of the number 1 there. I see there's dimension, I just can't read it.
Yeah, through the chair, I'm sorry, I don't have that dimension, but you are correct. It is you know, it is of a good size. I want to say like I think 10 meters, but I don't have that in front of me.
Well, the road is 30 feet wide. So
No, it's wider than
that
no, the road is, yeah, the road is at least 66 feet. So
wide? I don't think so. I go down there all the time.
the road
It's like 2 lanes.
Right of way.
Yeah, the right, what Dave is saying, Brenda, is
including the
road
ditches
right-of-way
and everything.
expectation is 66 feet. The paved surface
30
only
feet.
needs to be, I believe, 20 feet. Or 30 feet? Okay. So compared to that, if what's shown on the map is the right-of-way, then that's, you know, probably maybe a 20-foot green strip. I don't know. I'm just guessing.
It's certainly several meters.
Yeah, and if I may just throw in before we go on to the next speaker, I personally, having, you know, living in a wildlife preserve here where I live, it's several meters is really not a substantive amount of land for large mammals like, say, bears and deer and cougars, wolves, whatever. You know, they would probably appreciate a little more room, a little more elbow room to get from A to B. But that's just my comment. And Nova, were you next?
Sure, thanks.
You're muted.
Yeah, I generally tend to agree with the discussions that are underway. I'm wondering what our mechanisms are for asking for more width. I mean, you know, like half a kilometer wide, so we're at a whole different scale. But my question was more around the covenant holder and the monitoring of covenants. My understanding, and I'm just seeking clarity if I'm understanding correctly, is when the regional district holds covenants, we don't do any kind of annual monitoring. They simply come up on the books when there's a subdivision proposal or a development permit proposal or a building permit proposal or something. And so are these kinds of covenants something that would benefit from annual monitoring? And if so, that's not something that we are really equipped to do. And therefore, I generally like to see a third party covenant holder like the Land Conservancy or the Nature Trust of Canada or something. So I'm wondering if that has been considered, and if not, what are the triggering moments where these covenants would get pulled up and reviewed or implemented if the subdivision is is put into place and all of the trees are removed in that covenant, when would anybody notice that? What are the enforcement points?
Okay, staff.
Thank you through the chair to the director. Yeah, there's no monitoring schedule for these types of covenants currently internally. We monitor these as development occurs. We enforce them as development is contemplated. When we get into a situation where there's potentially a discrepancy between development and protection of the covenant, we then take the next steps and look towards enforcement of the covenant. But we have not contemplated a third party a covenant in this situation. The wildlife corridor, we're comfortable with keeping that within the SRD's purview, along with the environmental covenant for the other area protected. If the regional district wants to start contemplating, more monitoring and agreements with third parties, we could look at that. But to date, for the most part, outside of some of the more rural areas, and outer islands, these covenants are typically held just in the name of the regional district. And I know it's different on Cortez, certainly, but in this case, given our ability to attend these sites internally, it works with us having the covenant only in our name.
Yeah, the third-party covenant holders might not be interested in such a small unit. My last question then is, what is the enforcement for covenant violation, or the penalty rather for covenant violation? Is it significant enough to deter violation? Because one could cut down the trees and pay the $500 fine and just be as happy if it's nominal. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, perhaps I could jump in and draw a distinction between covenants and bylaw contraventions, although there may be a complaint-driven mechanism for both. The issue with covenants, because they're a civil matter rather than a criminal matter, would be subject to a different set of rules. And certainly that's what the court would consider when looking at an accusation or an allegation that a covenant has been violated. That would be necessary for the regional district to make a case for damages and or remedial action. And so it is a different process, and not one where we can automatically, if you will, put in a fine mechanism to cover that. So hopefully that provides a bit more clarity.
It does. It sounds like they're goodwill agreements, really. In the covenants at a larger landscape level that I'm aware of, there's really clear penalties written in. So as long as everyone plays ball.
Okay, Brenda, you had your hand up.
Thank you
Sorry,
very much,
muted.
Mr. Chair. I just want to put this into the historical context in Area D. The Hagel family have been very, very good to our community as far as cooperating with what the community has wanted. They helped when Jim Hagel, before he passed away, he helped develop Hagel Park. He took hundreds of loads of dirt into this swampy area that he gave us for the park and built the most beautiful park, Hagel Park. Penny Hagel, who owns the property now and is subdividing it, she negotiated with the neighbors on Henry Road on lots 1, 2, and 3. She voluntarily saved that area of wildlife corridor just on a verbal request from the neighbors. They might have taken the trees down and sold them by now, but they never did. She's really good to us and has been very true to her word. And I completely don't think that we need to worry about heavy-handed enforcement of any kind with them. I just think that I know her son Ross is developing lot 3 for himself, and he'll be like his dad. He'll be environmentally conscious. And I don't know who owns lot 1, but if there's any possibility that Penny Hagel has any say in the width of the wildlife corridor on lot 1, we could, like the previous application with Hedifine, do a friendly request to slightly widen it, because there is a bear living in that forested area on lot 3, and there's all these pheasants and deer and whatnot. That this is their wildlife corridor, and it's one of the few that are left that will connect the forest behind us to the beach, to the, they have to get across the highway somehow, but they can get to the beach, and the deer like to get down there and lick salt off the rocks and things. So it's a really, I think it's an important thing to just ask about. And I'm pretty sure that if anyone any new owners that come in who might violate the wildlife corridor on lot 1, the neighbors will scream bloody murder to the regional district if anyone does that. So we have our own enforcers who live here who will be watching. And we have one of the managers from the forest ministry sitting above lot 5 who watches everything. And she'd be on the phone in 5 minutes. So I think, we're pretty safe that, everybody's conscious of this environmentally sensitive area and the animals that need it. And if humans want to move into that territory, they have to respect the animals. Thanks.
Okay, could I ask a question of staff? Is lot 1 developed at all? Do we have a building or anything?
It's just cleared, and it's great big burn piles.
It seems like if you're going to have conversations concerning widening the greenway from what it is now, from what's shown now, it seems like now would be the time to do it, not later. So, does this need to be referred back to planning staff to have those discussions to see if that can happen? And if it can, then it gets put on there now so that the new, if a purchaser comes along to purchase that property and develop it, they will know exactly what they're getting rather than have people try and impose it upon them later. It seems like now would be the time to do it. I also have the question of the, sort of long triangular shaped piece on lot 3. Why does it abruptly end at that line and not continue on to the highway?
Thank you through the chair. I'm not entirely sure why that is laid out the way it is. I would have to ask that question.
Okay.
Of the proponent.
All right. So is that lot 3, is that the steep slope along the highway, Brenda?
Yes, yeah, it is quite steep. And I believe on lot 3 that Ross took down a very large maple tree to build a driveway up to that house, the diagram of the house shown there. So I think that's the access to his house that got cleared away already, like the maple tree got taken down. But it would be good to have that wildlife corridor all the way to the highway.
All right, so.
Or whatever remnants we can
bring
my
question, or if you'd like, Mr. Chair, but my instinct says 2 things. One, there's a significant change in terrain, and it's highly unlikely you want a wildlife corridor to exit at a highway.
They have to get to the beach somehow. You see them dead on the side of the road all the time, deer, all along the island highway. That's the way it is. There's no underpass, there's no overpass. They have to get across there.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dave. My point was, though, if the wildlife are going to use that corridor anyway and possibly get killed on the highway, that should we not possibly at least designate that the area is a wildlife corridor and respect it. But my other point was on lot 1, if we're going to do something, now would be the time to do it. And if that's the case, then should it be referred back? And I leave that to the directors as to whether or not they want to refer it back and have the width of the corridor on lot 1 re-examined.
And maybe lot 3, the question you asked about elongating the lot 3 thing. And I think just for the information of the committee, the highway, South Island Highway, comes down in front of these lots from the York Hill, and it's a very steep, long hill coming down alongside Appian Way. And drivers coming north can see the wildlife from a long distance away. Like if a deer is trying to get across from lots 3, people will be able to see it for like 300 yards up the hill. So, and they could slow down and miss it. So it's not as unsafe a crossing as where the highway's flat. It's not as bad. I don't see dead deer along there now, and they get to the beach somehow.
Okay, so we are on, I believe, receipt still, Dave, is that, or Tom, is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, you're currently on receipt.
Okay, so is there anything further on receipt? Anyone opposed to receipt? Seeing none, we've received it. Now, what do you want to do with it?
I would move to take the advice of the chair and move to refer the application back to planning to request that the wildlife corridors on lots 1 and 3 be maximized as much as we can to make room for the animals that live there, and then bring it back for comment at the next meeting, for consideration at the next meeting, pardon me.
Mr. Chair.
So is there a seconder?
Well, I think, Mr. Chair, if it's okay with you, as this will be coming back, a direction to staff on this is fine. We'll take it back and bring it back with those comments.
Sure. Okay.
Okay, just 1 second, please. Okay, sorry, phone call going on in the background here. All right, so Dave, could you please repeat the last part of your advice?
Just refer it back to staff, and we've heard the comments from Director Lee, and we'll bring the report back to the next East meeting.
Thank you. Okay, that's good.
That's fine, and that's what I was suggesting. Okay, so that's been moved, and was there a seconder?
We're not moving it. We're just giving direction to staff.
So this is just direction to staff, okay?
Yeah.
All right. Direction to staff is
just refer it back.
Directed.
A motion. Sorry, Mr. Chair, my bad. Just a motion to refer it back to staff is fine.
So moved.
Okay, well, that's what I was asking for, was a motion.
Second.
Okay, so is there a seconder motion? Okay, moved and seconded. It's going back to staff, and we'll see it at the next EASC meeting. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. And we'll, I guess, is there anyone opposed to that motion? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 3, ESA development permit for Knudsen.
Move receipt.
Second.
Report AO.
Annika can
Okay,
speak to
any
this.
comment on CAO?
Aniko can speak to this.
Okay, Aniko.
Hi, thank you. Through the chair to the committee, this application is for an environmentally sensitive development permit for the construction of a single-family dwelling, carriage house, carport, and shed on a property that has multiple environmentally sensitive areas associated with it. We have issued a previous ESADP permit for the clearing of the property, and now as the owner would like to commence development, a new development permit to provide guidelines for the construction of these buildings is required. An environmentally sensitive report has been provided by a professional and has provided a number of SPIAs and setback areas for the development and a number of guidelines to be adhered to associated with that development. As all of those requirements are contained within the development permit for construction and meets the guidelines of the OCP, we are recommending approval of the ESADP to allow for the construction of the dwellings as proposed. Thank you.
Okay, Brenda, thank you. Aniko, Brenda, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I do now. Well, I tried. Didn't go up there. Okay, so my question is that across the street from this development on Vaughan Road, I have a couple houses that have very poor water pressure because they're beyond the end, they're at the end of the water line, basically around there. And I question why we're allowing what to me in my mind is a duplex. When you put a carriage house on a regular house, you're putting two families in and using double the amount of water. I don't know if we should be approving carriage houses on properties that are on the tail end of our Area D water line, because it's just asking for a lot of complaints about water pressure.
Mr. Chair, sorry, I don't know how to do hand up here when I'm sitting at the table. Just a technical clarity on that, Director Lee. Water pressure is a function of height and not demand, if you will. So putting extra homes on it does not diminish your pressure. It has no effect on it.
Well, this is up a fairly steep hill. This lot is at the top of a fairly steep hill on Enquist. Gets my heart going when I ride my bike up that hill. And it is going to be a water pressure problem for anyone who wants to suck more than regular amount of water out of the pipe. I know we have people across the street on Vaughan that are just getting a trickle of water right now. So if their water pressure is diminished by having two homes on the property across from them, they're going to be screaming blue murder. So I just want to let you know that water pressure is an issue at the top of this hill that connects Enquist to Vaughan.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. I'm just saying adding, if there's a water pressure issue, adding homes will not compound that issue. Again, it's a function of elevation, not number of homes.
Well, they have the elevation there. That's a problem.
Okay, so I hear you both saying the same thing, that their elevation is a problem and elevation is a problem. So what do you want to do with this, folks? It's
the difference of what I'm hearing between our CAO and Director Lee is that, yes, height is an issue, but I'm hearing our CAO say that adding more homes doesn't compound the pressure issue that is caused by the height. Am I understanding correctly?
Correct. We do have a staff recommendation, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Okay, but it'll be, you know, the developer's going to have to be conscious of the fact that whoever might live on that property might not get good water pressure because of the height of that lot in relation to the water line.
Well, if that's the case, we know who will be blamed for it, so.
Yeah, not me, said the cat. I raised it.
Okay, on the
Comment, Mr.
receipt. Pardon me?
May I make a
Is that you,
comment?
Gerald?
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
I don't see you.
water pressure is easily solved with an internal pressure tank and a small pump. All rural homes have a system like that.
Yes, it can be, that's for sure.
So if the
That's
developer
what I have.
a lot, he can put in a pump.
Okay. All those in favor of receipt? Or sorry, anyone opposed to receipt? And seeing none, it's received. And on to B, which is that we
Move B.
recommend.
Move B.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Okay, I'd like to suggest that we take a 5-minute comfort break, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Not a problem?
Nope.
James, eyes.
Okay, that's pretty close to 5 minutes. Everybody back?
I think
Yep.
it's just you and
Missing
me.
anybody?
Jim, there is Gerald there?
Yep.
Oh, there you are. Okay. Nova? Don't think Nova's back.
Okay, we'll give her another minute.
I have to say, I made killer coffee this morning. It's 454 horsepower, and that's why I'm all speedy this morning.
Oh,
Doesn't do us any good that you made good coffee.
I know. Well, my son's visiting from Ottawa, and he loves coffee, so I had to get my coffee act together. So he's upstairs waiting for me to get through this one, and all day long I'll be in meetings.
well, you can make him a big pot and put it in a
I
thermos.
did. I made him a huge pot of nice coffee.
Okay. All right, well, we'll call the meeting back to order, and we have now finished Knudsen, I believe. We took the vote on that, right, Tom? On B?
No, we didn't. We received, I think.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay, I thought we also did B.
Mr.
If
Chairman,
not,
we did.
and
There was a vote.
motion
Did we?
for B.
There was a vote called on B, and you called that as accepted, approved?
Oh, okay. On Knudsen?
I
Okay.
thought we did.
Yes.
I know we did on
Okay.
the Hagel.
Item, pardon me?
We did on Hagel, we
Yeah.
moved B, but I wasn't sure about Knudsen.
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
Okay, item 4, rezoning application for Russick.
Move receipt of report.
Second.
Mr. Chair, Aniko can
Anything
speak to
from
this.
staff? Go ahead, Aniko.
Thank you through the chair. This is Meredith speaking on this one.
Go ahead, Meredith.
Thank you, Director Abram. So this application was to rezone a 0.2 hectare parcel situated at 36620 Gold River Highway to a proposed new commercial 2A zone to permit 2 campground spaces associated with an off-site commercial guiding business. It's located within the upland resource area of Oyster Bay Buttle Lake Electoral Area D and is bounded by the Gold River Highway to the east and seasonal recreational properties on the remaining 3 sides. The proposal is generally consistent with the official community plan and will meet all the requirements as laid out in section 303 policy 10 of that bylaw. And while it is a request for a rezoning, an OCP amendment is not required, as new campgrounds and other tourist facilities may be permitted on any portion of the planning area without amending the OCP. Circulation of the proposal to government agencies and First Nations highlighted some concerns regarding sewage disposal and water supply issues, as well as an historic covenant prohibiting the commercial use of recreational parcels in the area. And so licenses and approvals from those provincial agencies would be required prior to any commercial use of the parcel. Given the above concerns related to sewage disposal and water supply, it is recommended that support not be given to the proposal. However, should the board wish to further consider the application, an amendment bylaw would be drafted for review at an upcoming meeting. Thank you.
Okay, so it's recommended by staff to not proceed. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you, Meredith. And welcome, by the way, and Happy New Year.
To you as well.
Okay. Thank you. Brenda?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to be supporting the recommendation from planning to deny the application. There's some salient facts that were not just given to us. And one of them is that this parcel of land proposed to be rezoned commercial in the middle of an upland resource zone that's 1,000 acre minimum parcel size completely offends our OCP, and the OCP should be looked at if this was to go ahead. This is on our drinking water supply, so it already has a structure on it that's occupied, and then the applicant on 1/5 of an acre wants to put a couple more cabins next to the Cedar Creek area and Buttle Lake and operate businesses out of there. The proposal went to the Area D Advisory Commission before Christmas, and it was rejected, and there were around 20 to 25 people that came from the Cedar Creek area to attend the meeting that were all adamantly opposed to this. Putting a commercial zone into the middle of the upland resource forestry area and on the edge of our drinking water supply would be completely flying in the face of our OCP and completely unacceptable to Area D. I spoke to the applicant at the APC meeting, and I told him that, you know, that is not a very viable proposal, and I think he understood that. The reasons people were worried about it, and so I'm supporting the recommendation to deny, and I don't want to see this application come back again. It's totally offensive to our OCP. So I move to deny.
So just
I move B.
Yeah, that's great.
Once
Just
we
a quick
receive.
comment on that, Mr. Chair. Staff cannot prevent people from making applications, so
Well,
you
I
don't have
think
to
the
support it,
applicant-
but we're not in control of whether people make an application or not.
I think the applicant understands that there's a lot of resistance to this 1/5 of an acre in the middle of our forestry zones being allowed and on the edge of our drinking water supply. It's ridiculous. And if it comes back, it'll probably get the same response.
We've got it, Brenda. Okay, on receipt, Nova, did you want to, Nova, did you want to speak?
I did have a question, thank you, just with regards to the covenant. I notice in the executive summary near the end of the staff report, it says that after circulation to government agencies, the historic covenant prohibiting commercial use of recreational properties was identified. And I'm just wondering who holds that covenant and how that wasn't known to the applicant or to us earlier. You'd think that would be registered on title and have come up immediately. So just wondering who holds that covenant and how that covenant could be known more proactively in future incidences, and if that covenant exists throughout that historic subdivision and neighborhood. Thank you.
Okay, Meredith, do you want to take that?
Sure, thank you through the chair. Yes, the covenant applies to the entire development area there, and it went on when the development was originally put in place, and it's not enforceable by the SRD. It's not unlike a covenant that we hold, though it doesn't exist on title. It's something that was part of the original development, but is not something that is currently enforceable. All that the SRD can enforce is our bylaws. Thank you.
So who is that covenant registered with, and who does enforce it then?
That is with the developer.
If I may, through the
chair,
chair,
may not exist anymore.
Yeah, if I may, through the chair to the director, the covenant holder is in fact the developer. It is a building scheme, and it is up to the developer to continue to enforce anything contained within that building scheme.
I wonder if for future situation, it wouldn't be wise for the developer to ask the regional district somehow to hold that covenant, so this would come up early if other properties in this subdivision had similar ideas. We could just avoid getting this far down this route. I mean, leave it with Director Lee and staff, but if there was some way of making this more formal to avoid this in the future, it might be advisable.
Okay, so onward, as far as receipt, is there anything else? Brenda, did you have something?
Yes, I appreciate
receipt,
I appreciate the comments from Director Anderson. And one thing I spoke to the applicant about at the APC meeting, after the meeting concluded, I talked to him about his application, and he's a young man, very, very young. I said to him that, you know, this commercial zoning that is being proposed doesn't just apply to the current owner, it could apply to future owners. And I said, with a commercial zoning, we don't really know the kind of things that could be proposed on this 1/5 of an acre. Like, this is smaller than a city lot in Campbell River. This is a tiny little piece of land up above our drinking water supply. What if the property was sold and somebody wanted to put a petrol station in there or something? Like, I don't know what kind of future applications of this commercial zone would be in the middle of our upland resource zone, but they could be very dangerous to our drinking water supplies. And I just don't think that, I think we need to take a longer view, as Director Anderson was intimating, that we should have not just the developer, but we should have the SRD or a third party overseeing, because if this property flipped to someone else and they wanted to do something else that was maybe even worse than what's being proposed, although I don't know what's worse than 3 accommodations on 1/5 of an acre. I think that's pretty harsh on the environment. But if somebody wanted to do a petrol station or something, how could we regulate that? And I take that seriously. This is our drinking water supply. Campbell River will take it seriously. We've denied applications like this on McIver Lake before because of danger to the drinking water supply. I don't think we should go down this road at all with this, but I think Director Anderson's comment about having a covenant on the property so that if it flips, so that future owners might know what they're allowed to do and what they're not, is a good idea. So I would like to, after we deal with the denial motion, I'd like to make a subsequent to staff to investigate.
So first of all, we're going to finish up on the motion to receive. Is there anyone opposed? Received. And then we have your subsequent, I guess, would come in at this point. Go ahead.
No, I would move, let's deal with this application right now. I would move B, that the application be denied.
Second.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Anybody opposed? It's denied.
And subsequent, I would like to move that the planning department investigate the application of covenants on properties that are on our Puddle Lake drinking water supplies, and make sure that there's covenant holders other than the developers that can ensure the safety of our drinking water supplies. So I would like something put in by planning to give us that longer term protection so that it's not just a developer and just seems like the fox is in charge of the hen house. We need to have covenants registered other than the developer.
Could I just suggest for clarity that the language be that staff investigate how to strengthen the existing covenant held by the developer in this historical subdivision?
Okay. Yeah. And Cedar Creek is right next door to that, and they have covenants. So I don't know why we can't have the same rules.
Mr. Chair, do we have a motion?
I would go with Director Anderson's wording. It was very good.
Which was?
Which was Director Anderson?
That staff be directed to investigate options for increasing the protection afforded by the existing covenant held by the developer in this whole subdivision. And I would trust that would be that staff would look into the potential of there being a covenant holder beyond the developer. Just so this comes to light early on in the future. Thanks.
Seconder?
Second.
Discussion. I'd just like to say as the chair that this is most likely goes clear back to the Bouldings, et cetera, this whole subdivision, and historically it's a long time ago. So you're going to be looking into a lot of history, and whether you can change history, I don't know, but certainly you can change the future. So good motion. Glad to accept it. Is there any further discussion? Anybody opposed? That's carried. Okay, on to item 5, Cortez Island Fire Protection Service property removal requests.
Move receipt of serial report.
Second.
Tom can speak to this, Mr. Chair.
Any discussion on receipt? Okay, Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I will try to be brief because I know you've got a number of items still to get through. This refers to a request that was received, I believe, early last year from a property owner on Cortez that his property be removed from the fire protection area. It's complicated because the boundary for the service actually runs through not the middle of his property, but through a corner of his property. It was complicated by the fact the assessment authority was assessing all of his property for fire protection, and so it was an elongated process. We had to go back to the assessment authority. They have now fixed the problem in that most of his farm assessment is now coded as being outside the service area. There is still that tiny piece of his land within the boundary, and if the committee wishes us to pursue having that part removed as well, that can certainly be done, but this is really more for informational purposes at this point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Nova?
Yeah, thank you. The request from Blue Jay Lake Farm was indeed to remove their entire property. I think they actually own 3 parcels, perhaps, from the fire protection boundary. And I initially supported that and would still support that. But staff have advised historically, and I see some merit to it, that, you know, if one person wants out, then that sets a precedent for other people wanting out, and that's maybe not the wisest thing. However, now that the assessment authority has divided along the line of the property, along the fire protection line, I would support option 1 in the staff report and would like to move that. If we've finished with receipt.
We haven't. So if we can finish with the receipt, is there anything further on receipt? Anyone opposed? Carried. Continue, Nova.
Thank you. So I'd like to move option 1 as presented in the staff report, that the committee recommend that the request by Blue Jay Lake Farms to exclude a portion of its property from the Southern Cortez Fire Protection Area be supported. And with a seconder, I'd speak to that.
I'll second it.
Thank you. It's simply that the realistic ability for the fire department to respond in a timely fashion, given its distance up a very long sort of unmaintained logging road, is minimal. They have a very good fire suppression system of their own. And so I think just not taxing them for a piece of property that isn't actually in the protection service area, when we probably weren't going to be able to provide them good service, is entirely fair. So this doesn't change the boundary and set a precedent that would be awkward, but it just means that now that the folios are separated, we can tax them along the fire protection boundary. Thanks.
Okay, anything further?
Mr. Chairman, if I could interrupt, and I do apologize.
Yes, go ahead, Tom.
Just for clarity, with the intent of the motion, is the director suggesting that we would not change the boundary, the current service boundary, or that we would bring forward a bylaw to exclude the portion of his property currently within the service area still to be removed from the service area? I'm not really clear on that point.
Thank you. I'm suggesting that we do not change the boundary because I think that staff's point is well taken, that that creates a precedent, an awkward precedent for other people on the edge of the boundary around the island, but that we no longer tax for fire protection on the portion of the property that is outside the boundary.
Thank you very much.
And for clarity, I'd need to ask staff, is it even legal for you to keep it within the boundary but not tax it?
No, Mr. Chairman. I do believe that what Director Anderson is suggesting is that the tax for the Fire Protection Service, given the changes made by the Assessment Authority, would no longer include any of the farm operations that are currently beyond the current service boundary, which is most of the property for the applicant is beyond the Fire Protection Service boundary. So that would no longer be taxed for the fire protection. That's my understanding.
Okay, you're comfortable with that, that's fine. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Schedule of meetings, item 6.
Move that the
Report from the CAO.
Move that the CAO's report be received.
Okay, is there a seconder?
Second.
Moved and seconded, and I think that the caveat on this would always be that meetings can be changed upon proper notification if necessary for extenuating circumstances.
Absolutely.
Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely, Mr. Chair. At the chair's discretion there, and just for the group's information, this is in line with previous year's schedule, so nothing really new here, no significant or any changes to the philosophies we've had in previous years with taking breaks for things like UBCM, Christmas, having one meeting a month in the summer still maintains.
And this is the same schedule that was proposed to board
yes.
recently?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so on receipt, anyone opposed? Carried.
Move
Item B.
Move B.
Second.
Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Carried. Okay, moving on to item 7, Quadra Island Sustainability Plan Area C. Report from CAO.
Move receipt of report.
Second.
Moved and seconded. And discussion.
Nothing really from staff, Mr. Chair. Just again, we've discussed this one at other EASC meetings and budget as well. It's our opinion through discussions with UBCM that we have spent, let's say, 2/3 of the grant funding. We can use the remaining funding to complete the plan, and that's staff recommendation, and that if we did not complete the plan, it is likely that UBCM would want the money we spent back. So once again, it's our recommendation that we complete the plan.
Okay, and I appreciate that as the director for Area C. I find it to be a wise recommendation. And I would just like to ask, if I may, on item B, at the end of where it says Integrated Community Sustainability Plan, and that it say, and further that the advertising include local display ads in the Quadra / Outer Islands media being the Discovery Islander, Sturge Currents, and the Bird's Eye.
I think,
Just
Mr.
to
Chair,
be,
that including that in the resolution's kind of getting deep in the weeds. We've heard you. We have a local consultant. We will attempt to engage local consultants. We advertise on our website, BC Bid. We're happy to advertise on the island as well. And I think that's in the recommendation. I think identifying specific publications might be getting a little bit too deep in the weeds. We hear you.
okay, and I understand that you hear me, but I do want it registered that, because I know that the standard process, you have standard people that you advertise with, and things like BC Bid, like you mentioned, but I would like it to be specifically noted on the record that these local publications will be advertised in, that there will be no doubt later on as to whether or not we advertise properly or whatever. Just it gives me a little more comfort that we are going to really seek a local consultant. I know that it says that we're going to do that, but this is the proof in the pudding right there, is that we're going to ask the three main online publications, and one of them is also hard copy, that those publications will be included in the advertising process rather than just the standards. That's why I'm suggesting it, and if nobody wants to go along with that, fine. But that's what
Okay,
I would like to do. Go ahead, Brenda.
I would like to formally move that the recommendation be amended. So the first part of B, fine. And then it would say, and further that display ads be placed in all local media outlets in Area C, period.
That's close enough.
Mr. Chairman, just to remind, you're still on receipt?
Yes, okay, you're right. On receipt. Is there anyone opposed?
Well, I've got my hand up.
It's been received.
I've had my hand up for discussion on receipt.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I didn't see it.
That's okay.
Go ahead. On
Thank
receipt.
you.
Go ahead.
I have one question to staff and one to the director for the area, if that's permissible. To staff, I totally support local consultants. Fantastic. I'm curious under what authority we can be that specific. I didn't know we could. And then my question through to the director, my memory, if it serves me correctly, is when this was brought up last time, the director was not in support of this recommendation because the sense was that the work to date had been not to the liking of the community and not complete or sufficient or something, and that it was deemed that most of the money had already been spent and to not proceed. I remember Director Abram being really clear about wanting to not throw good money after bad. So I just love to understand the director's change of heart and what information might have supported that change, if my memory is correct. Thank you.
If I can just jump in and quickly answer the first one, because I have a quick answer to that. The direction is just that we advertise to a local consultant. There may not be anybody out there interested, but of course we want to reach out to them and provide that availability. It doesn't mean we are sole sourcing to somebody. We have to abide by the procurement rules of the grant that was provided to us.
And on the advertisement, I completely get that. The very beginning of B says that a local consultant be engaged, not just advertised to.
Well, once again, we are going to advertise local and follow the procurement rules of the grant that was provided to us.
Okay.
Okay, and on your second point, if I may, you're absolutely right. I was absolutely dead set against good money after bad. in having discussions and listening to the wisdom of our CAO and our CO concerning what would happen if we did that, and having to give back possibly $70,000 with a $50,000 expenditure already having happened. It made no sense. So the saw-off was, let's hire locally, because there are local people that would love to, continue with this plan, get it finished, because it is holding us up. We cannot proceed with the review of the Quadra Island OCP, the Quadra Island zoning bylaw, the Outer Islands brand new OCP, and the Outer Islands zoning bylaw review. So those 4 documents, they need to be looked at, and we can't look at them until we finish this ICSP and move on from there. So I'm totally in favor of moving on, and I am extremely pleased that staff have included local consultant, and now we'll have a subsequent motion after that. So anyway, I hope that answers your question, Noba.
And I really hope that comes to be. That would be fantastic. And my only concern, and I trust you and staff have thought this through, is can we, for the 20,000 remaining, create a product that we want to be on the books and inform all the rest of those planning processes? And if not, we maybe should cut our losses and return the funds. But if you believe that that's enough to actually render a good product that will be the baseline for all that other work, then you have my full support.
Okay, and my comment back would be that, of course, 20,000 is not a lot of money in the consulting world, but I think it's enough money for a local consultant to be able to go through the existing work and make it work, even if they're just revising what's already been done, and then continue and finish it up. Okay, so on the motion, there was an amendment proposed. Brenda?
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, you're still on receipt.
After receipt.
Okay, sorry. I knew I was going to do that. On receipt, anyone opposed? Carried.
Okay, the motion would be that I would move that the committee recommend that a local consultant be recruited to finalize the Electoral Area C Integrated Community Sustainability Plan, and that the ads be displayed in local media in Area C, and further that, if necessary, an extension be requested to the Strategic Priorities Fund agreement between the Strathcona Regional District and the UBCM for the project.
Is there a seconder?
I would second it, Jim, except that I'm a little bit concerned of the wording. They're saying that we engage a local consultant. I think that's a little bit too direct.
I said recruit. I didn't say the word engaged, because I would think that the committee would still want to review who's being proposed before they get hired.
Mr. Chair, that won't happen. So we will not bring the policy for procurement would not require us to engage a consultant and then bring that back for committee's review. It's $20,000. It's under the committee's the procurement line, and we would not be bringing that back to committee for approval.
Okay, so that's not really part of the, it was a sort of an aside. The wording, Gerald, is local consultant be recruited. That was the amendment.
Same thing though, Jim?
Well, you can recruit
without
and
signing a
not
contract.
get anybody. And if they're not, if the recruitment process doesn't bring anybody up, then it goes somewhere else.
All right.
If you say engaged, then you're saying.
Have any objections?
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? I would support this totally. The fact that it gets advertised locally, I'm sure will bring somebody out of the weeds to apply for the position, and it will be totally up to staff to hire them. And we will not be seeing it back before the committee before it happens. Just to be clear, and to go along with our CAO's sage advice. Okay, thank you. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much, everybody. Number 8, Electoral Area Financial Assistance Grant and Aid Service. Gerald, I believe you had a motion.
Yeah, I'd move that we defer this item to the next electoral area meeting. We have more time to think about it.
Okay, so it's moved to defer to the next meeting. Is there any discussion? No, there isn't on deferral. So anyone opposed? Seeing none, it's deferred to the next meeting.
Director Lee, did you second that?
Okay.
I don't know if you were muted or not. I think I saw your lips going there, but I wasn't sure if you were
No,
muted.
I didn't, but I will. I will to help you out.
I thought you seconded also. I saw your lips move.
But I will. I know people read my lips sometimes. I don't know how they do it. Anyway.
Yeah, you better watch.
Anyway, I'll second.
Better watch. Okay, and then so we don't have bylaws, correspondence, director's reports, but we did have the item that I mentioned as far as business. Where did that go? There it is. I said that I had a motion.
Yeah, I think Edie will bring it up here in a sec there.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that you did have it. So the chair has it, the CAO has it, and our executive assistant has it. You tell me when you're ready.
Can you see that?
Okay. Can everybody see that? Okay, so the motion is that staff investigate the April Point properties to ensure that current activity on the property is in line with local zoning and land development bylaws, as well as all other requirements of other agencies. Is there a seconder?
Second.
Mr. Chairman, sorry to interrupt, but I do believe under your rules of procedure that the chair cannot make motions while sitting in the chair. So
I'll make the motion.
Okay.
I'll make the motion. Gerald seconds.
All right.
Thank you. And the only reason I said it, Tom, was because I saw my initials there. Sorry. I know the rule, and you're absolutely right. Okay, so we do have it now duly moved and seconded. And on discussion, if you don't mind, I would like to just clarify it real quickly. This is the large portion of land, I believe it's about 140 or 50 acres that encompassed originally the April Point Lodge and Marina and a number of leasehold properties, etc. We were in the process of working with the owners of the properties, the original owners, developers, with previous planning staff and the previous CAO and a consultant from Victoria to work out a development plan for the property, including an incredible amount of greenways and parks, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, that fell by the wayside when one of the principals died, and the others took them quite a while to recover from that. And then at that point, they just weren't interested in restarting the process at that time. In the meantime, they have sold the property to another group that has already started development, I'll call it, on the property in the way of roads and things like that. And they are advertising, and I sent the two links to Dave to clarify that, you know, this was appropriate for me to ask this question at the meeting, because they are already advertising through a realtor in Courtenay on a website, and they also have their own Facebook page up regarding this development and proceeding with it. And yet I have word from our general manager of planning services that there is no application whatsoever in on this property to deal with it. So the only way we can find out is to ask, and that's why I'm asking staff to investigate what's going on. And Nova, did you have your hand up, Nova?
Yeah, thank you. My question was simply around process here. Everything you say, Jim, is fair. But is a director putting forward this motion, regardless of whether it's Brenda or Jim or anyone, is that the same as a bylaw complaint? And does this in any way jeopardize our ability to proceed in court or with enforcement if it's a director that brings this forward? I remember on other items, and I don't remember if they're in camera, so I'll be vague, that this was brought up. So I'm just looking for procedural or legal advice on this one.
I can answer
if that. I could just...
I'll answer that, Mr. Chair. So yes, we have had a presentation by a lawyer numerous times on this issue. So yes, if we have a bylaw issue brought forward by the director, the likelihood of success in the court of law is slim.
And is this motion,
if I may,
essentially a bylaw complaint? And therefore, would it be advisable for a member of the public to bring this forward to staff rather than to us? I'd be much more comfortable with that.
If I could please speak. This is not a bylaw complaint. We do not know in any way, shape, or form if there's a bylaw being, if there's an infraction, if there's even a bylaw needed or whatever. The motion is to investigate what is going on the property, period.
And I'm asking for clarity from staff, because if I, as a citizen, says, hey, I think there's something maybe not right going on property next to me, would you have a look? I think we call that a bylaw complaint. So I'm just asking staff, is this indeed a bylaw complaint? And if so, I don't think it's advisable if there's somebody in the neighborhood who'd rather do it.
Well, I can say that we will certainly have bylaw investigate it.
But in conversation with our CAO, it was agreed between the two of us that this was not a bylaw complaint at this point, that it is just an investigation, and that's why it's worded the way it is. If after the investigation, staff find that there are, infractions, then yes, you're correct. They would, the public would have to be the ones to complain, not me.
But the staff don't ever go and investigate something. Staff don't ever go and investigate something unless somebody brings it to our attention. And this is, I just think you're on thin ice. And if you want issues to be resolved, and you want the courts to be on our, on the side supporting our bylaws, I think somebody in the neighborhood should bring this forward. I I just don't see the difference.
Well, the difference, Nova, if I may, is that I am receiving calls and emails daily asking me about these new properties that are being sold at April Point. And I am telling those people I know absolutely nothing about it, other than I drove out there and saw that, yes, there are roads being built. Okay,
Yeah.
so the only avenue I have is to ask staff to please have a look. Is there something going on at April Point or not?
So when I
Because I
receive
have to be
similar
people,
calls from
I
my
have to be able
constituency, I say, I can't do anything. Please file a complaint yourself. And I think if any of those multiple people, either together or combined, were to do this directly to staff, you'd just be in a much stronger position to actually enforce something. So I'm concerned that you're cutting your arm off here. And unless I hear really strongly from staff, won't support it because of that, not because of the content, just the process.
You're not hearing me, Nova. I'm saying there has been no bylaw infraction. So I am not filing, a complaint to staff on a bylaw infraction. I am asking for information on whether or not there is a development taking place on an Area C piece of land, so that when people call me, I can tell them, yes, I understand there is something taking place, and if you don't like it, please file a complaint. Right now, I can't even say that.
My point stands.
Thank you. Okay. Is there any
Question on the
further
motion?
discussion on?
Question?
Okay, question on the motion. All those in favor? Or sorry, anybody opposed?
Anderson opposed.
Okay, it carries.
Move
Thank you
termination.
very much.
Move termination.
Is that where we're at?
Yep.
Second.
Dave, I didn't forget anything, did I?
No, you're all good.
Okay. Termination's been moved and seconded, and we're done. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you.
Go see my boy.
See you in an hour.
Okay, bye.
Say hi to your boy.